So we're going to spend a little bit of this time speaking about parts, and in particular speaking about exiled parts, because I think part of the theme of this conference is the power of connection, which we can see on the screen. And one of the points I think you bring up is if we're not connected to ourself, or we're not connected to the various parts of ourself, it's very hard to then connect with another person. And so connection is kind of an inner job, if you will. And that as part of that inner job, we have to better understand what are the parts that we welcome and what are the parts that we've maybe pushed away. So that's my intention here, would be to help give us some insight into how do we orient around parts, and how do we find and relate to parts that maybe we put away as a kid because we were told not to be confident, or we were told not to talk so much, or we were told just shut up and do your thing, and then all of a sudden something gets pushed aside. So I was wondering if it might be useful to start just as an orientation to how we define parts, and how you see that process of highlighting a part and having a part that's exiled, and how we can be more holistic in our approach.
So for me, it's the natural state of the mind to be multiple, in the sense that we all have these inner personalities, subpersonalities. Some systems call them, I call them parts, just because that's the most user-friendly word. Everybody says, part of me is happy to be here, another part wishes I was still in bed, which isn't true for me. But, and the basic idea is that they're all valuable, that we're born this way because they each have a role to play in our life that can be very helpful to us. But traumas and attachment injuries force them out of their naturally valuable states into roles they're not equipped for, and also can be quite damaging down the road. The role might have been needed when you were getting abused to save your life, but then the part gets frozen in time and thinks it has to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And in terms of the exiles you're talking about, have you ever been humiliated in your life? Soren?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to go there. I wasn't planning to go there, but yes.
We don't have to go there, but when that happened to you, what did you try to do with the memories, sensations, emotions, and beliefs from the experience?
I tried to get them out of my awareness and hope that I would never have that experience again.
Yeah. You're not alone. That's what most people do, especially in this American culture, because this is a rugged individualist, just move on kind of culture.
Yeah.
And that, I'd be an advocate of that if that actually worked. But the problem with that is that not only are you trying to leave these memories, sensations, emotions, and beliefs in the past, but you're also locking away the parts of you that now carry those burdens, that carry all those feelings, because you can't stand those feelings, and you're not even aware that that's what you're doing. You're not even aware that you're exiling all your juice, because a lot of these parts were your most sensitive parts. These, before they got hurt or scared or shamed, they were these lovely inner children who could give you all kinds of awe and sense of creativity and desire to connect with people.
Playfulness.
But once they do get hurt, you don't want anything to do with them anymore. And so it's like in the Marines, no man left behind. You left all that behind in second grade and tried to just move on without connection to a lot of those qualities that you left back there. And so
you lose access to the gifts of that part too, right?
So not only do you lose access to their gifts, but for the parts themselves, it's like insult to injury. The injury was the hurt or the terror or the shame, and the insult is being abandoned by you. And so they're suffering. They're really desperate in there. And so as you go through life and something happens that any way similar, they explode out, and it's like flames of emotion threaten to consume you and take you away. And so when you get a bunch of exiles like that, you have to have a bunch of what we call protector parts. So
is that related to when we get triggered, or is that usually something around that? There's that emotional response that's
that would
charged.
be the flames of emotion from the exiles is when you get triggered. And then we have a bunch of parts who's spending all their lives trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Some of them are trying to manage our lives so that we never get triggered. So control your relationships and don't let anybody too close, or control your appearance so people don't reject
I
you.
remember when I had the humiliated experience when I was young, I became very serious. I was like, life is suffering, there's pain, I'm just going to become very serious, I'm going to work hard. There was a lot of that playfulness and fun that Gone, yeah.
Locked away.
Yeah. So what is the process? First, the process is probably just being aware of the fact that this is happening, that these things exist. And how do you see the process of rediscovery or reassimilation or that welcoming? And I know IFS is a very systematic way of working with that, but could you say a little bit about how you've learned to bring those parts in a way that is inclusive?
Yeah. So I learned the hard way to do it through the protector parts that I just mentioned. Because the mistake I was making and some psychotherapies make is to try to break through those defenses and get to those exiles as soon as possible, and then let them come out, and sometimes in an overwhelming or flooding way. And then there's a backlash from the protectors they've tried to keep that locked up for 30 years.
So whenever there's a trauma or pain, there's the pain, but then there's what you're calling protectors. There's like there's an energy that is making sure that doesn't get touched. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. For me, trauma per se isn't traumatizing. What's traumatizing is the impact on this inner system I'm describing.
Okay.
Where some parts get exiled and others are forced into these protective roles.
Got it.
So going back to your question a minute ago, so we go to those protectors, and this might sound bizarre to some of you, but you can literally have conversations with them. But first I'll get the client into what here might be called a mindful state toward those protectors. So if we were working for you, and let's say the serious guy who you mentioned, Soren, I'd say, focus on him, find him in your body, and how do you feel toward him? You want to do that?
Sure. I feel kind of frustrated for him because I feel like he took over and I lost a lot of teenage years when I could be out having fun. Instead, I didn't have I'm
So I'm
having fun now, but I didn't then.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand why you'd be kind of pissed at him.
Yeah.
But let's see if the parts of you that do have that attitude toward him could give us a little space in there so you could just get to know him rather than be angry at him. So you could get curious about him.
Okay, yeah, I can look at him with curiosity.
And how do you feel toward him now?
I feel like he's tense, and he feels kind of anxious.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like he's very in a good place.
Okay. So from this curious place, ask him what he wants you to know. Just that open question.
So I'm asking him in my mind's eye, what does he want to know?
What does he want you to know?
What does he want me to know?
About his tenseness.
He's got a booklet out, and he's making schedules, and he's making plans, and he's like trying to make sure everything gets done and on time, and he's very kind of persistent with that. And I'm interpreting that what he wants me to know is that he's very busy, and he's very making sure that he protects me well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know this guy.
Yeah.
I worked with him yesterday to try.
Is that right? Same guy.
So ask him what he's afraid would happen if he didn't work so hard this way. And just wait for the answer. Don't think of the answer.
If he didn't work so hard, what would happen?
Yeah, what's he afraid would happen?
Shit would fall apart. The organization and the structure of our lives would fall apart, and chaos would reign.
That's exactly what my guy said.
Is that
right? Okay. So how do you feel toward him now as you hear all this?
I feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
I feel that's a lot of responsibility to make sure my life doesn't get chaotic.
Yeah. So let him know. You feel sorry for him?
Yeah, okay.
See if you can actually show him that you care about him and you feel sorry for him. And just
I can kind of pat him on the back and be like, man, that's a tough job.
Yeah. And how's he reacting as you do that?
He seems to take it. He's like, yeah, it is. He's like, yeah, you're right. It's been a tough job. I worked my butt off.
And ask him if he protects parts that might be stuck in times that were very chaotic or where things were falling apart, just ask him that question.
He says I protect vulnerable parts, or
Yeah.
I protect things from getting hurt again.
From getting hurt again?
Yeah.
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 Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Can we tell you? Yeah.
we don't have to go there.
Yeah, I felt really embarrassed and ashamed as a kid after my parents divorced, and I was used to be like a popular athlete. I was out doing stuff, and then once the parents divorced, and I felt a lot of shame, and then I think I kind of hid part of myself.
Yeah.
So that was that feeling of kind of being a kid and like not quite sure what to do. So
How old is that boy?
in my mind, or
in
about
your mind.
13, 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel toward him as you see him there?
I feel tenderness towards him. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, he learned a lot from the experience. I don't know if I'd be here today without that experience, because I feel like that introduced me to meditation, introduced me to a lot of different experiences. So there was like, that was a really beneficial time. I think if I hadn't had that experience, I might have just gone and followed my friends to business school and Texas oil company or something. So there was something that experience also opened up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So see if you can let him know you feel tender toward him and see how he reacts to that.
He likes that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much further you want to go with this.
As far as we need to.
Really? Okay. So he's reacting well to you being with him in this tender way. Okay. And ask him if he feels like you get how bad that time was, or if there's more he needs you to feel or see or sense about it.
Yeah, he feels like I get it. I think he feels like, I didn't know what to do. It's hard for me when people, I work my butt off to be respected. I work my butt off to be successful. And it's hard for me to be seen as not successful or as not accomplished.
So there's a lot of shame with that.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen. I want to be like seen in a way that's like competent and on it. And so he wants me to understand that there's pain around that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So do you feel like you get it? Ask him if he does feel like you get the pain around it.
Yeah, he thinks, all right, you know what it's like. Yeah, you get the pain. I think as best I can get, he feels like I understand the pain around that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'd like you to go into that time period and be with him in the way he needed somebody. Tell me when you're in there with him.
Back in that other time.
The divorce time, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can be with him.
How are you being with
He's
him?
really small, and I'm really big. It's interesting. Like, our bodies are very different body types, but I'm just kind of like hanging out with him.
And how's he like having you there?
He appreciates it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
He feels accepted.
ask him if there's anything he wants you to do with him or for him back there.
He wants me to hold him, so I can do that. He's very small. It's like I can actually hold him in my arms. Yeah, so that's.
Does he need you to talk to anybody back there or do anything else, or does he just want to leave?
He just wants to be held, it looks like. Yeah, he just wants to not be alone and be held and feel like safe, that like, yeah, he's seeking safety, it feels like.
Does he feel safe as you're holding him? Okay. All right, so see if he's ready now to leave that time and place and come with you to a safe, comfortable place.
He's not sure.
Yeah, ask him, what's his reluctance?
He's just like, it's a really dangerous world out there.
Well,
and I'm very vulnerable, and I don't know if I want to go out there.
yeah. So there's truth in that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can take him to a fantasy place. It doesn't have to be this
Okay.
world. It can be anywhere he'd like.
Okay, he's open to that. Yeah, he's open to going. He's not open to going. He's open to going somewhere.
Yeah.
He wants it to be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can show him alternatives, or he can tell
He
you
likes
more.
the beach.
Beach, yeah.
Yeah.
Beach is very popular with
It's a nice place to be. He likes the beach. You can kind of see out. It's safe. You can like look and see if there's ships that are going to attack or something. Like there's that feeling of being able to see or look around that he likes.
Okay, good. So how's he doing? And you're there with him on the beach? How's he doing now?
He's good. He's enjoying. He's still a little suspicious and checking out the sites, waiting for something to attack. But in general, he's pretty good.
Okay. And tell him he never has to go back there, and you're going to be taking care of him now. So he
Okay.
is safe.
Okay?
And see if he's ready to unload the feelings and beliefs he got back there.
Yeah.
And where does he carry all that, in his body or on his body?
He shows me his arms, and he's going like this.
All right.
So
Is he ready to unload that? Is that what
he says he is, and he's also growing. So he was like, he's getting taller as I talk to him.
That's great.
So I think that's a sign, yeah.
Yeah. So tell him to keep doing that, letting all that out of his arms.
Okay.
Maybe going to the water or the sand or something.
Okay.
Let's do that until that's all out of him.
Okay. He's like flushing the water over him.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but it feels healing. Like it feels like the water is rushing over him and is like taking things with it into the ocean.
That's great. Yeah. So we'll just stay with that until it feels complete.
Yeah. It feels good. He's much taller now. He's like 6'8" or something. Like he's like big.
He can protect you now.
Yeah. He's big.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. And then let's bring in the first guy, the guy with all the schedules.
Organizer.
Organizer. So he can see he doesn't have to protect this guy anymore, and just see how he reacts.
He's impressed. He's like, whoa, I don't need to protect that anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. So he's willing to give up his clipboard, I think, pretty easily.
Okay. And he can think about a new role now if he wants.
Okay. Phew. Yeah. Yeah, he's done. He's done. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to just theorize about
I know.
But it's good.
You're such an unbelievably good sport to do that.
Well, can you talk through what you did and how that process worked? I was a little bit I'm not a total trance state, but I was also not quite following. Yeah. I was in my own visual world, so.
Okay, so we started with this serious guy who turned out to be the organizer guy.
Yeah.
And then we asked him what he was protecting.
Yeah.
And then we went to that, which was the boy in the divorce scene.
Yeah.
Which would be the exile.
Yeah.
That you tried to push away when this guy took over to organize your life and not ever have something chaotic like that happen and all the shame happen again.
Yeah.
And we did a whole healing with that boy, which involves 3 main steps. One is for you to witness what he went through and feel how bad it was for him.
And you can't move on until you've done that, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. And then to literally get him out of where he's stuck in the past to a safe place. And then to what we call unburden, to release the emotions and beliefs he got from that time. And it's not uncommon that they start to grow right away and become who they we're designed to be, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then we bring in the protector to see he doesn't have to do that anymore.
And is the thought that once protectors see this, we don't have to go into more of these frantic protection modes because they've realized like what...
You're not so vulnerable anymore. Yeah.
Got it. And that we're almost stuck at different ages? Is that also like...
Pretty much.
Like part of me is, what am I, 52? 53? 52. 53 at the end of the month. So part of me is 52, but then another part is like 12, and another part is like...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you did a great
And for
retrieval.
people who are wanting to better understand this, I know there's tons of IFS therapists and IFS people. Are there internal practices that we can do on a daily basis that just allow us to move towards more of a sense of because I feel like so much of our persona gets built up around pain, right? I'm going to appear confident because I don't want to look weak, or I'm going to appear smart because I don't want to look stupid, or so there's this way in which it creates this chaos, and I'm wondering, besides kind of more the therapeutic, are there practices or orientations that we take that allow that to soften somewhat so we don't have to try to hide and also try to present this image?
Yeah. We have a goal of trying to bring this out to the public, sort of like a MBSR kind of thing, where people can do a lot. What we just did, most people can't do by themselves. Some people can, it's amazing. I can't, but people can get to know their protectors. Like even just going and showing appreciation to this guy that you thought was such a drag, initially you didn't like him. And then he feels good because now he's seen for how hard he tried to save you and so on.
Yeah.
That's a big shift in itself,
Yeah.
even if you don't go to the exiles.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, we try to get rid of things. Like, I want to get rid of my anxiety.
Right.
I don't want to be anxious.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to like figure that out, and I feel bad when I am anxious. And you're presenting it different.
Totally different. And with my heart in my throat, I'll make a dig at the spiritual community because this is where we are. The ego becomes the enemy in this community too often. And the ego is just a bunch of these little protectors who are deserving of this kind of love and appreciation rather than being the monkey mind that you're supposed to dispose of. Yeah.
So with that anxiety, is your suggestion to almost thank that anxiety? Like,
Totally.
thank you so much for... But I see the anxiety is creating havoc on my life. So how am I supposed to thank it for creating havoc in my life?
If we had another hour, I would help you do that.
But just in general for the people here, the orientation is whenever you're having an experience, it has a purpose. Whether I get angry a lot or I get frustrated a lot, that there's something there, and if I give it attention...
Not necessarily a purpose now, but it served a purpose. It tried to protect you at some point in your life.
Right, okay.
And now it may be anachronistic. Now this anxiety isn't necessary anymore, but the part doesn't know that because it's still frozen back there.
Got it.
So we go with open curiosity, compassion, hear its secret history of how it got stuck in that role,
Yeah.
carries the burden of anxiety, and then we help it unload the anxiety. But if you're yelling at it all the time, or you're irritated with it all the time, it's just going to get stronger. So.
Can you do this with political leaders who might not...
They got to want it.
Yeah, okay. Because it seems like our culture is built around creating personas out of trauma, right? We get hurt, and all of a sudden I'm going to become this successful person, or this powerful person, or this whatever person. And to be able to understand that and tap into it, but it never quite satisfies us, right? No matter what power we get, what accomplishments we get, whatever we get, there's still that...
It's true. You can imagine the exiles in our current president.
Yeah.
When I see him now, that's what I see.
Yeah.
And then he's got these protectors, like my understanding is his brother drank himself to death, and to save himself, he took on the energy of his father, which hates vulnerability. So his biggest protector, and then he's inflicting that on our country.
Right.
But it really was just to save his life.
Right, right. It had a purpose at a moment.
He needed it. It saved his life.
Right.
And now he's stuck with it as what we call a legacy burden.
Right. Until we bring awareness to it and bring gratitude to it and witness its pain. Seems like the hardest part when you always do that process was like, can you just witness his pain?
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Like, it's so hard.
But that's everybody's reaction at first, because we all have protectors that don't want us to go back there.
Yeah.
What's the point? Why should I grovel in that, right?
Right.
So we have ways I'm basically a salesman, so I'm selling hope to these parts, that there's some good reason to go there.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to grovel in it, we're going to get them out of there and unload this pain.
Right.
So these protectors don't have to worry about it anymore.
And is that when you look at things like addiction, would you say addiction is a lot of these parts that are misunderstood, that are acting out?
Totally.
And if we can better understand them, we can actually give them what they need, but they're trying to fulfill something in the addiction that has a purpose, or makes sense, if you will.
Yeah. I'm starting to collaborate with my friend Gabor Mate, and I love his line, which is, don't tell me about your addiction, tell me about your pain.
Yeah.
And so we go to the addicted part and listen to how much it saved your life, how much it's, when we come along and say, just say no, the part says, screw you, because if I stop doing this, suicide is the next protector on the list.
Yeah.
He's going to kill himself if I don't do this job for him.
So I'm helping him.
So we honor the addictive parts for their service, and then ask if we could get him out of his pain in a different way, would you have to keep doing this addictive thing?
Right.
The answer is almost always no, but I don't think you can do that.
Right.
Would you give me a chance to prove that we can? Because we absolutely can. So.
Right. And you found that with the addictive behavior, you can actually get into that, and then the addiction doesn't need to happen because the part is actually getting witnessed and seen?
Yep.
Wow. What other areas do you find it can be helpful in?
Well, we're using with most everything these days.
Okay.
All kinds of different psychiatric problems and psychological problems.
And was this something that you feel like you kind of
Stumbled
onto this, right? Where you're like, there's parts in a family, and those same parts must exist internally in us.
No, it wasn't quite like that. It was more like I was trying to prove family therapy worked, and it wasn't working, and my clients started telling me about these parts that were keeping them from changing.
Wow.
And I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But I'm a good scientist. I got very curious about it, and my clients taught this to me. And as they were talking about all these parts, it sounded familiar to me as a family therapist. It sounded like this internal family that had all these similar kinds of polarizations, and some are protecting others, and so that was the inception of it.
And did you think you were a little weird and crazy when this started happening, or did you just kind of roll with it?
I thought these people are a lot sicker than I thought. But then I started listening inside myself, and oh my God, I've got them too.
Right.
And some of mine are as extreme as my clients.
Right, right.
And then I got curious, and yeah.
It does make me look with more compassion at people if I think that they're playing out parts that just got stuck at a certain age and a certain time. It does make me look at the world more compassionately, because I don't judge the behavior, but I understand, like, wow, something happened that got frozen at a time, and they're still trying to work that out, right? They're still trying to get acceptance or love from the society or from their father or from something, or avoid pain. Like, that part does help. And it also makes a lot of sense that I would want to be compassionate to different parts of myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a law of this inner world that goes something like, you will relate to somebody who's acting or looking like one of your parts in the way you relate to that part of yourself.
So I will relate to, I will relate to somebody who's anxious in the same way I relate to my own anxiety.
Exactly.
So if I'm like, I can't stand their anxiety, I can't be around them, I hate being around them, I can't be around myself.
You got it.
I hate that about life. So frustrating. So to understand where the parts of us that are unhealed, just notice who we get triggered by.
That's one way to do it.
And so if we look at, let's say, I don't know, our president, just because everybody knows that, I get triggered by him in part because I might not have access to my own parts that want to be confident or want to tell people what to do or want to be
Yeah, to be the boss or something
Right.
like that, yeah.
But is there something that's just like, no, that's just, person's just kind of an asshole? Does
Well,
that
there
exist
is.
anywhere where it's just like, yeah, no, they're just, I'm not talking about any in particular, but just like, yeah, no, that person's just an asshole.
Yeah. There is, I wouldn't put it exactly
Yeah, I
like
know,
that,
just
but
strong language, I know, but.
we didn't talk a lot about what I call the self.
Oh yeah, let's talk briefly about that.
Is the place we access before we start working with these parts. And so you were in a lot of self because first I said, how do you feel toward the part? And you said, I'm irritated with it.
Yeah,
We got that to step back, and automatically you had a lot of compassion for it.
yeah,
And I find that over and over as we do this, that
yeah.
this compassionate, we'll call the 8 C's of self-leadership: calm, curious, creative, clear, courageous, connected person is in everybody. It's our essence, and it's just beneath the surface of these parts, such that as they step out, it emerges, and it knows how to heal both internally and externally. And it also has this intense desire to stand up to injustice. So a lot of what the panels were talking about, and Marianne this morning, and is if we access self, we will automatically start to change in the external world. And my belief is that a lot of psychedelics immediately access a lot of self. And that part of why the 60s were so raucous was because self was coming through that portal back then.
And self is presence, is spaciousness, is
Those are all
awareness.
those are all qualities of self.
Okay. For somebody who hears the word self, though, and be like, what is he really?
Yeah, 'cause it's got a bad name with the Buddhists because it's no self, right?
Right.
But what's called no self, there's a Buddhist scholar named Jack Engler who wrote a paper on IFS and Buddhism saying what they're calling no self is really what I'm calling self, because they're actually talking about no parts.
Got it.
So when
There's
your
no parts taking over. We're actually.
Yeah, when your parts open a lot of space, the emptiness that's so full is yourself. But you're no self.
Yeah. I think it was actually Eckhart Tolle, who comes from a different world, but he said whenever you break a pattern, that the energy of that pattern gets transformed into presence. So if you have a pattern that you're caught in, it's taking up energy, and as soon as you can see that and not follow it, that builds presence. And it sounds like you're in a similar understanding that.
Similar understanding, although I could do a rant about his.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I probably shouldn't do.
Well, we're out of time, and you've got to go to Q&A. But yeah, another time. Dick Schwartz, everybody. Thank you so much.